everybody, and welcome to the Monday edition, first Monday show of the season of the NHL Strategy Show, sponsored by Bet365. I am your tired host, Josh Harris. I was at the Jets game yesterday in a suite. First time the Jets beat the Eagles in franchise history, but I had to drive all over New Jersey because the people I went with just idiots. So I literally drove for like 6 hours yesterday when I lived 45 minutes from the stadium. But here we are. I like this slate, 5-game slate. GPPs are pretty nice considering there is, the Millie Maker NFL Showdown. There's the spin tomorrow that they already posted 100K to first. You don't see that too often in NHL, so that's going to be a fun show tomorrow. But today we have 5 games. We have some firepower on this slate. We have Matthews, but we have the
you're gonna name some more Leafs, and you're like, nah, I don't think so. Just Matthews.
He's going up against Bedard tonight. Taylor Hall should be back. I do really like 5-game slates. 5 to 8 games are the sweet spot. I feel like a broken record when I say that. We had a couple big slates over the weekend. How was your weekend?
Not a bad weekend. Didn't do well on Saturday night. That was the night Carolina was in Los Angeles. Carolina scored 5 goals on our Los Angeles Kings. And if I'm not mistaken, they got 1 assist out of their forwards on 5 goals. 15 shots from their forwards on 5 goals. So didn't do that well on Saturday. Took last night off. Decided to catch up on Gen V. Do you watch The Boys on Amazon?
I am through 2 seasons, so I have some catching up to do.
Okay, yeah. Season 3 is really, really good. And then they just released a spinoff called Gen V, which is like superhero university, basically, but it's the same idea as The Boys. It is really good. So got caught up on that last night. I did watch quite a bit of the Ducks game. The Ducks look good. I mean, Carolina, we were talking before the show, back-to-back West Coast swing. So maybe not at their best, but Anaheim legitimately look good. I'm interested to see how they do, over a bigger sample, but good start so far.
One game for the Ducks, and we're sucked into playing them already. Or 2 games for it.
I mean, we're idiots on this channel. We're going to play the Ducks almost regardless of the situation or the slate. But we'll see how things go as they move along.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, I was going to defend that take, but yeah, we're going to play the Ducks.
Oh yeah, we are.
Yeah. Make sure to, there's like 50 of you in here. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. If you do that, you can keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live so you can get here on time. If YouTube isn't for you, you can find all of our content over on the Stochastic Podcast channel. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Just say Josh's giant melon sent you. I'll know who it is. And then don't forget to sign up for the Stochastic Hall of Fame by changing your avatar on DraftKings and FanDuel. You'll get a shout out in the weekly Hall of Fame segment. You can download the avatar at stochastic.com/avatar. Got a place in the top 3 of a contest with over 5K contestants. Tweak the win to @StochasticHOF on X, or if you don't have Twitter, email us with your screenshot, support@stochastic.com. You will win a free month of Stochastic package of your choice. You can only win once in a calendar year. But again, like I always say, if you are winning more than once, you should be just fine with the financials. Let's get into this 5-gamer. We're going to kick it off with a bang here. Over under 6.5. Trending towards 7. There's a couple 7 over unders on this slate. This could be a spicy slate. Detroit Red Wings with a 3.5 total heading into Columbus. The Blue Jackets have a 3.2 total. Wings morning skate was a bit interesting. They went 11-7 last game, and the coach really liked how it turned out. But in skate today, they had David Perron down on the third line with Sprong and Veleno. And honestly, I don't mind that line. Not great power play correlation there, but we'll see if they go 11-7 or they actually run these lines.
They did say Jeff Petry's going to be a healthy scratch, which, not a good start to a season, but yeah. I'm assuming it'll be 12-6 if he's being healthy scratched.
Yeah, if that's the case, it's going to be DeBrincat, Larkin, Raymond, which Raymond kind of shut us up for a game. He kind of had a decent game, 11-7. It's just the show curse. It is what it is. JT Confer, Romfer, Johnfer, whatever his name is, Andrew Kopp, Michael Rasmussen on that second line. That should probably be their third line at this point. But that third line is Sprong, Veleno, Perron. Could be good. I think Sprong will benefit from having Perron there because Sprong is a good shooter. Perron's a very good playmaker. So Blue Jackets going with Fantilli, Line, Texier, second line of Marchenko, Jenner, Gaudreau. If the Wings do run 12-6, you are hinting at, I kind of really like this Jenner line going out against the Confer line. They're not, they're on the second power play unit. They're kind of going split power play units again. These teams, the split power play units, I get it from a hockey perspective, but from a DFS hockey perspective, don't really enjoy it. I kind of like both sides of this game. Obviously it's trending towards a 7 over under. I just, kind of wish it wasn't Raymond on the top line. I'm still going to die on that hill.
Yeah, okay. We do have to talk a little bit about Raymond because we do slag him quite a bit on the show, and he's a guy that I just generally haven't been high on. I thought something they might do in the offseason is trade Raymond for the Brinkat. I thought that might end up being the trade, and it would save them. They could get something else back for him or whatever. But anyways, he has been off to he has good production to start his career. But a lot of the underlying stuff that we look at, play driving, zone entries, scoring chance assists, like assisting on teammate scoring chances, those types of things just really haven't been there. The funny thing is when I looked for a player with a comparable start to his career, so same kind of play driving output in his age 19 and 20 season, same kind of shot rate, et cetera, the one guy that came up was Jesper Bratt. And I thought that was an interesting comp because if you look at Bratt's career, it took him basically 3, almost 4 years to kind of get going and turn into the player that he was. This is Raymond's third season. If he follows that path, it would still be another year. Maybe he's a year early on that because the reason we're kind of low on him is because high-end guys tend to show that they're high-end guys fairly quickly in the NHL. It doesn't take them 3 or 4 years to show high-end offensive upside. Even Jack Hughes, who had a brutal start to his career, there were some underlying numbers in those brutal, months and seasons that showed the promise that he had. So that's kind of why we were low on Raymond. I'm just wondering, maybe he, the comp on the show I made before too was Mikko Rantanen. Maybe he's another Rantanen or another Bratt where it takes 3 or 4 years to really be acclimated. And, if this is his breakout season and he turns into a player like that, then the line is probably undervalued, right? So that's why I'm kind of torn here is because if he is going to start a breakout, then they are underpriced, undervalued, under everything. If he's not, then they're overpriced, overvalued, and over everything. So it's kind of a little tough to say exactly, what you want to do. But we should mention in the first 2 games together, Raymond and Larkin on the ice for 88 shot attempts per 60 minutes. Only 2 games, but that's absurd. I'm wondering if, maybe this is not a breakout. So I don't really mind that Detroit top line. Obviously the matchup is a big part of it, right? Columbus is missing Zach Werenski. Lots of questions in there all across their forward lineup, right? How good is Patrick Laine as the center? Can Alex Tessier play in the top 6? Is Boone Jenner, completely healthy? All those types of things. They're starting, their third string goalie, I guess you'd call him. So I don't really love Detroit 1, but it is a really good matchup. And as you mentioned, that those totals are trending up, the game totals. So we have them on top stacks, 12.5% ownership tonight on DraftKings. It's perfectly fine. Same thing on FanDuel, but they have a lower top 2 probability because of the way the salaries and the scoring works out over there. I think they're perfectly fine to play. What I might do is make sure I get in one of the Detroit defensemen. We saw Moritz Seider have a huge game over the weekend. Shane Gostisbehere, the minutes really haven't been there, but he's looked pretty good at least in the bits of the Detroit games that I saw. And a lot of his, underlying fantasy stats for such a small sample are strong as well. So if you want to slide Gostisbehere in there with the stack, I think that's one way to go. Like, I wouldn't be overly concerned about ownership. Like if they come in at like 12, 15%, like it's really not that big of a deal on a 5-game slate. If you are a little worried about it, like I would just throw in one of the defensemen. I'm not sure what else to do with the depth because, like you mentioned, like Comfort Rasmussen should probably be the third line, but then who else would be the second line? You know what I mean? Like David Perron, like I have to admit, I'm a big fan of his. I thought he was underrated coming into the season. He hasn't looked good. Like there's a reason why he's been moved down to the third line, and it's his performance. So, that's why I'm not super high on that Detroit third line, and they're coming in way over leveraged on FanDuel, so you don't have to play them there, and even more over leveraged on DraftKings. Like our top stacks tool, I'll bring it up real quick. I won't show the whole thing, but our top stacks tool, the top over leveraged line on DraftKings tonight, 3% top 2 stack, 11.7% ownership. I don't know. It feels like it's if you're going to tell me that the Detroit second and third lines are going to be way over-owned on a short slate, like I have zero problem saying I'm not playing the Detroit second and third lines. So I think for me, it's Detroit 1 or nothing. Like I said, mix in Cedar or Gostisbehere or whatever if you want on the blue line. On the Columbus side, this is tough, man. It's really tough looking at those lines. Like I know the coach said he's treating the new, Fantilli, Line or whatever top power play unit as a top power play unit. I have a hard time believing that they're going to give that power play unit more ice time than Johnny Gaudreau game in and game out for like weeks on end. So does it last a game? Does it last 3 games? Does it last 10 games? Like that's kind of the question. For now, we kind of have to assume that power play unit is the top unit, but it's just really, really weird. Like I'm not super stoked on Alex Tessier or Adam Bachfist or whatever getting more power play time than Johnny Gaudreau. Like I can't believe like a coach would run his team like that for a long stretch of time. So I'm kind of fine playing that Columbus second line. Just because they are perfectly correlated, again, on our top stacks tool. Coming in perfectly fine ownership, coming in at about 3%. They're coming in with a lot less ownership than the other line, despite the fact that they're a little bit cheaper. I wrote up Adam Fantilli in the picks article. He's playing with Line and Tessier. And I think it should be noted that Fantilli is second on the team, again, 2 games, but second on the team or first on the team in shot rate, ahead of Line. Like those are the 2 guys taking the shots for Columbus. And I bring it up because Fantilli, like he's a goal scorer. He's supposed to be a goal scorer, but he's not supposed to be like a huge volume shooter like Connor Bedard is. 30-goal guy, maybe 250 shots, but not, we're expecting Bedard to get to like 350, 400 shots in the next couple of years. Like Fantilli's not supposed to be that, but he is shooting a lot. So I almost want to take advantage of it while he is shooting. So I got to say, I kind of like taking a chance on that Line Fantilli Tessier line. Like if you want to leave Tessier off, I think he's the guy that gets moved. Like if that line I know.
I'm a big Tessier guy.
I know you're a Tessier guy.
I'm a huge Ken Johnson guy too.
So. I'm really not. I'm just thinking like if that line gets broken up, I think he's the guy that gets moved down, right? Mm-hmm. And they're going to avoid the Larkin line. Like they're going to send out Boone Jenner and Johnny Gaudreau against the Larkin line, right? So you're going up against like Kopp and Rasmussen, or you're going up against Veleno and Perron. Like I'm not worried about those matchups. So I gotta say I kind of like the Line A line the best here. I think either of the top 2 Columbus lines are certainly in play. I don't know if I'd be stacking anything beyond that. What do you think?
Yeah, this game. I mean, I'm fine full stacking Texier in there because he's 2,700, right? If he gets an assist and a couple shots, and then he like is -3 and gets moved down, you already kind of hit the value there. But it's Spencer Martin in net, and that's given me the biggest problem, right? He couldn't even stay on Vancouver with all the injuries. You know what I mean? Like this guy is a AHL goalie. So I think probably my favorite thing from this game is Detroit power play. And I think, you mentioned Prawn's, play hasn't been great, but people are going to see him on the third line and probably just leave him off. I think even one-offing Prawn or matching him with Cedar or Ghost, it's a nice way to get a little bit different. If you're worried about ownership, you can leave Raymond off at in Prawn, or, you can do things. I think both sides are viable here, and they're expecting goals. So, yeah, I think, going Detroit power play, Detroit 1 is my favorite in this game. But Line Fantilli, Texier is fine for me. You want to use that second. Like, I agree with you. Like, there's no way that Johnny Gaudreau isn't on the top power play unit by the end of this game. Like, if it, or like at the end of the week, like by the end of the week, the coach is going to be like, I'm an idiot. We just need to load the power play. So, like, I think the second line's fine, but I'm going to save a little bit and go Fantilli and Line, I think.
Yeah, I like that too.
Let's move on to the next game of the night. Another 7 over/under. And this game got some line changes, and it is a spicy meatball. Florida Panthers with a 3 total heading into New Jersey. I toured New Jersey yesterday. I probably passed that stadium like 4 times. The Devils have a 3.9 total. Flyers mixing up Flyers. I always do that. The Panthers mixing up their lines. They're going Alexander Barkov, Evan Rodriguez, and Sam Reinhart as the top line at 17,100, making the second line E2D2 Lusterine and Matty Tkachuk and Carter Verhaeghe at 7-4. Devils status quo here. So this is kind of important, right? Because Lusterine and Tkachuk have very, very good numbers together, and they were like bringing everyone on their wing to credibility. Now you add in an excellent two-way player in Carter Verhaeghe. That line is going to be a wagon to deal with, and they're going to probably get the Hughes matchup tonight. Now, if you look at the top stacks tool, the Hughes line is second in top 2 stack percentage. They have the most positive leverage on the night. The thing with the Panthers is they're very high event. They take a lot of penalties. So I think, the Hughes line certainly in play. I like the Hughes line going into the Barkov line. Now, we're talking about this before the show. I just have a tough time stacking the Heischer line going like without having Hughes or Bratt. Like, that line has been rolling. I don't know really how much I want to play that Heischer line. Like, they're coming in at 7%. They're the lowest top 6 line in this game. I just have a hard time not stacking Jack Hughes on the Devils. So I kind of think my favorite line in this game are both the second lines.
Yeah, I'm going to start on the New Jersey side. I did write up Andre Palat today in the picks article, free to read over at stochastic.com. So just head on over, go to the NHL section, you'll see it there. What I wrote is that, Palat kind of had a tough year last year. He was injured coming into New Jersey. But him and Hischier played pretty well together, like 3.0 expected goals, 3.1 actual goals per 60 minutes. Like, that's really good, like well above league average, like 24% higher. So, perfectly fine offensively. Palat, it's Palat's price more than anything, right? Like 4,300 is just really, really cheap. That entire New Jersey line is only 17,700. You're saving over $3,000 from the top line. So it's a sizable drop. And they're going to get that Alexander Barkov matchup. And low key, Barkov and Reinhart have never played well together. I mean, never. This is Reinhart's 3rd season in Florida. They have almost 600 minutes together at 5-on-5. 2.4 expected goals per 60 minutes. That's below league average. That's Alexander Barkov with a below league average goal rate in nearly 600 minutes together with Sam Reinhart. And it's not just strictly bad luck. Only 2.66 expected goals for generated per 60 minutes. It's like 35% lower than Barkov with any other winger. Like, go through the list: Duclair, Verhaeghe, certainly Tkachuk, Rodriguez now. Like, whatever it is, those two just have a lot of trouble creating quality offense when they're on the ice. And they're pretty good defensively, but they don't, like, Barkov's line just doesn't carry the play as well. So it's not a great matchup going against Alexander Barkov. It never is. But, no Ekblad, no Montour still, obviously. You mentioned Florida's penalties. Second, or one of the most penalized teams in the league last year, certainly top 5. I think they might have been third, behind Ottawa and Arizona. So, I certainly do like that New Jersey second line, Meyer, Hischier, Palat, especially where Palat's so cheap and getting bumped up the lineup. But I'm having a hard time getting away from the top line. Like, I really am. Like, on the New Jersey side anyway. They've just been so good to start the season, like 83 shot attempts per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 to start the season. Hughes has 5 points in 2 games, 10 shots in those 2 games. The ice time is a little bit of a concern. I think Toffoli's at like 15 and a half minutes. That's definitely not what you want. But they're going to be going into that second line from Florida. And the second line from Florida, we'll get to them in a second. As good as they are offensively, they also give up a lot defensively, and like way, way more than the Barkov line. 3.7 expected goals against for Verhaeghe and Tkachuk when they skate together. So that's giving up a lot of chances. So I think I like that New Jersey top line, most of their top 2 lines, even, factoring in the savings that you would get on New Jersey 2. New Jersey 3 kind of looks interesting to me. Mercer, Haula, and Holtz. Like, now that Florida's completely stacked their top 2 lines, like, there's no one left in that depth. Like Anton Lundell, I think, is a decent player. But you're looking at Justin Sourdif, who I think is playing his first NHL game.
It will be his debut if he plays.
Yeah, Nick Cousins, who's like, the brotherhood of the traveling hockey bag, like going around from team to team year after year. Like, there's, what you're getting into those defensemen, like, Kulikov and Josh Mahura and those guys. You're not going up against the top pair. And, that New Jersey third line is only coming in at 1% ownership. Like, if you just want a 2-man like Holtz and Mercer for the power play, I think that's fine, and just 2-man those guys. But I kind of like that on the New Jersey side. On the Florida side, I went through all the reasons why Barkov and Reinhart just haven't been good offensively. So, like, I don't think I need to keep going there. I wonder if Evan Rodriguez can make a difference for them, but where Evan Rodriguez has typically struggled shooting percentage-wise, like basically his whole career, like, I can't imagine he's going to be the guy to unlock the secret to creating better quality chances on that top line. And I love Rodriguez. He's one of my favorite underrated players in the league. I just don't think he's going to be, the secret sauce as long as Reinhardt's there. It's Florida 2. Like, Florida 2 is one of my favorite stacks on the entire slate here tonight. You have Tkachuk, Verhaeghe, and Luosterainen. Now, Tkachuk and Verhaeghe, I mentioned how they've been giving up a lot defensively. Offensively, they're at 4.2 expected goals per 60 minutes together in their time since Tkachuk got to Florida. Not a huge sample, but Tkachuk basically drives those numbers with everybody. And Verhaeghe is one of the best dual threat, even strength forwards in the league, like passing and shooting. The reason he doesn't have a lot of assist totals is because Barkov really doesn't score a ton of 5-on-5 goals, and they haven't had a winger on the other side to fill the net either. But he is a really good playmaker. Eetu Luosterainen, like, he's a pretty good playmaker as well. Like, that line's going to get the Jack Hughes line, and, Jack Hughes creates a lot offensively. They're not elite defensively or anything approaching that. So I think it's Tkachuk, Verhaeghe, and Luosterainen that I like best in this game, like, period. Right after them would be the New Jersey top line, but that's kind of where I'm at. I don't see any reason to play anything in the Florida bottom 6 unless, if you're 150 maxing, you're going to see weird lineups with, like, you'll see a Kevin Stenlund in there somewhere. People playing them with the Florida top line or something like that. But I don't see any reason to stack any of the bottom 2 lines from Florida.
Yeah, and just as a strategy add on there, if the Hughes line sees the Luosterainen line, I know it's not possible to game stack those 2 lines together. It's too expensive, but you generally don't want to stack 2 lines going up against each other. Like, the range of outcomes for both of them to go off is pretty low. But I mean, it's not possible stacking tonight. That being said, I'm with you on Florida too. Like, the New Jersey goaltending is not very good at all. they do take a bunch of penalties. They do have a very good penalty kill, but like the goaltending in this game is very suspect, which is why you're seeing it lined at a 7 over under. So I think, depending on your preference, I think the Hughes line or Florida 2 is where I'm going. Before we get to the next one, I see our pal and neighborhood friendly Haas has given us a $4.99 super chat. Thank you very much. He said, Josh, did you by chance hop on the NJ Turnpike and head to the Taj Mahal in AC yesterday? The NJ Turnpike was literally the only road I wasn't on yesterday. I toured New Jersey. I was on every major highway except for the Turnpike. People from New Jersey, if you're from New Jersey, don't go on the Turnpike unless it's an absolute emergency. Only people from out of state drive on the Turnpike. If you missed the 10% off membership, we were talking to Jake about it, our boss Jake, chiseled jawline, the guy, wavy hair, super good looking. He was like, yeah, we had some demand for it, so we're bringing it back. For today only, there was big demand for it. Some people DM me, missed out on it. So if you click the link in the description below, you can get 10% off weekly and monthly memberships to get access to the best NHL data and tools in the industry. You get player and ownership projections, top stacks tools, line combinations, and the Discord. Today is the last day. We're bringing it back for one night only. Feel like it's a DX reunion. 10% off, but you have to click the link in the description to get the 10% off weekly or monthly memberships. You probably should do it. Oh, and Elway's Army said do it. And my man, I forgot about you at the top of the show because the weekend is long and I have a memory span of a squirrel. He had a huge night the other night. He won, I think it was the poke check, right? He tagged you too. You have a better memory than I do, but he had a huge night. Congrats to you. Now KJ says, wow, no shout out from Josh on the Haas credit score. Yeah. If you want to get in the Discord, you're going to see Haas tagging me in some weird shit. He tagged me just to tell me he has an 820 credit score. Like, congrats. Like, you can get a loan.
I mean, that's something. Maybe you can take out a loan and subscribe to Stochastic for the full season.
Yeah, for real. Instead of, asking me about he signed up. He actually used the link in the description.
Yeah, that's true. I should
actually crazy. Yeah. He listened to something we said for once, which is awesome because Haas, great guy, will ask 36 people the same question until he gets the answer he wants to hear. But anyway, let's move on to the next one. The Arizona Coyotes with a 2.7 total heading into Madison Square Garden. The Rangers have a 3.8 total. It is not King Carroll in net tonight. It is Connor Ingram for the Yotes. I'm still a big Connor Ingram guy. I thought it was kind of silly that the Nashville Predators just kind of sent him to the recycling bin when they could have gotten something for him. I think he is a very viable backup, and he could actually probably be a low-end starter in this league. Rangers getting a ton of ownership here tonight, especially that Panarin, Hedl, and Lafreniere line, because they are still under 14,000. They are 13.9. Their ownership is double their top two stack percentage. That being said, I think it is a very good matchup. There are a bunch of coolies in this game. Rangers 3 coming in wildly over-owned because they're 10,600. Trocheck, Wheeler, and Will Cooley coming off his first NHL goal. The other Cooley, Logan Cooley, Jason Zucker, Kerfoot, that line's getting almost no ownership. But in this game, actually the lowest owned Rangers line is the top line. They're having the same issue that they had last year. It's a finishing issue. They're also, like, if there's one line on the Yotes that is decent defensively, it is that Keller, Hayton, Schmaltz line. And the Zibanejad line is going to see that line. Like, I get that the Hedl line's in the best matchup, but if you're going to get the top Rangers line at 17-1, around 6%, I think you kind of go there because Arizona takes a ton of penalties and their penalty kill is not good at all. So while the 5-on-5 matchup really favors the Hedl line, I want to get that power play exposure at lower ownership on the Zibanejad line.
Yeah, Arizona led the league in power play opportunities given to the opponent last year, and I wrote it up again in that picks article because I was talking about Artemi Panarin. They took something like, it was like there's a bigger gap between them and second place for power play opportunities given to the opponent than second and eighth place or something like that. Like there was, like they were far and away the most penalized team in the league last year. And I went and looked, they gave up 5 power plays in the first game of this season. I also wonder, like they've had a pretty brutal travel schedule, right? Like them and the Kings had to go to Australia for that, preseason showcase or whatever. They came back. They had like 4 days off during training camp, which I don't think is necessarily ideal when you're trying to ramp up for a season. And then they start on the East Coast. They start with an East Coast trip. So you go from Australia to Arizona, get 4 days off, have like a week of training camp, and then fly back out east for a pair of games. Like it just seems like a pretty bad schedule for them to start. Now, as you mentioned with the Rangers top line, the finishing has always been in the issue. We brought it up on both the shows where we've had the Rangers play. They play really well with Capo Caco up there, and they even they're well above average in goals for, goals against. The problem is like the numbers of goals for, goals against are very high because they don't finish. Like 61 shot attempts per 60 in 21 plus minutes so far this season, and they still have yet to score. The other issue is ice time, right? There hasn't really been a lot of ice time. Kako is of the 3 guys on the top line, Kako is getting the most 5-on-5 time, and he's 6th on the team. Now, it's just 2 games, right? But, playing 16, 17 minutes, that's not what you want from your top line. And that concerns me a little bit, but it's not concerning enough to where I'd be like, no, I don't want to play them on a 5-game slate at home to Arizona. You know what I mean? Like if this was like a 10-gamer and Carolina was in town or something like that, it would be a completely different story. So I think they're still perfectly fine because they do have those 2 guys on the top power play unit. Power play has looked good. Like aside from the second line, it's the power play that has stood out to me through New York's first 2 games. Like it looked better than I can remember watching it last season. That's for sure. You get 2 guys on the top power play unit. Kreider has 3 goals in 2 games. They can still get it done. Like they can still pretty much get all the fantasy value you need through the power play, especially where they might get a lot of chances here tonight with Arizona in town. So I think I agree with you. Like the Rangers second line, to my eye, has looked like their best line so far this season, the line of Panarin, Lafreniere, and Hedl. And I wrote up Artemi Panarin in that picks article, mainly because he's so cheap, right? Like his DraftKings price is low 6,000s. FanDuel's not that far off. And like his projection is basically in line with the guys that are in the 7-8K range. So I think they're fine to play on a cost basis, but I think just for ownership, I would rather dip down to that Rangers or go up to that Rangers first line. Sorry. Dipping down to the third line is something I cannot recommend. When we look at their ownership, 9% ownership on that Rangers third line. And they have played well. Like, don't get me wrong. They have played well. And on a short slate, things can happen. 2-man Trocheck and Cooley, I guess, would be fine. It's depending what you do with the rest of your lineup. I just think if I'm playing the Rangers, I want as many guys on the power play as I can, and that's definitely going to the Kreider, Zibanejad, Kako line. On the Arizona side, I am quite interested in that top line. 5-game slate. Zibanejad Kreider line is good. It's going to be a tough matchup, especially if I think they said Ryan Lindgren might be back. I know he's not necessarily going to play with Fox, but it just gives him a little bit of defensive depth. He's a game time decision on the blue line. But they're only coming in with 4.5% ownership. Their leverage is one of the better leverage spots on the night, especially when you consider their price, because there's a whole bunch of good lines right around that 17K range. And all of them are expected to come in with higher ownership. So I get if you don't want to play Arizona going up against Igor Shesterkin, can be pretty tough. 520 minutes together last year, 3.9 goals scored per 60 minutes. They were legit, and Barrett Hayton legitimately made them better. If you look at Arizona top line's numbers over the last 3 years, with Hayton, it's 27% more expected goals and 17% more goals scored per 60 minutes. Like, those are really big numbers. So it's not just Keller and Schmaltz carrying some guy. Like, I hate to say it, kind of like they did with Travis Boyd. It's like there's a reason why he was a healthy scratch to start the season. It's Barrett Hayton legitimately contributing, especially in the defensive end. You don't necessarily need good defensive hockey to be valuable in DFS, but it does help being able to get the puck out of your zone and back towards the offensive zone. So I do like the Rangers top line, or the Arizona top line here tonight. I'm sorry. There are a bunch of lines right in that 17K range, and that's what kind of sucks is, like, depending what you want to do with the rest of your lineup, like, they're $700 cheaper than Florida 2. Like, I'm sorry, I'd rather play Florida 2 here tonight. You know what I mean? Like, that's just kind of where it is. Like, they're relatively the same price as that Columbus Jenner line. They're relatively the same price as the Rangers top line we just mentioned. If I can get the Rangers top line a little bit higher owned, but, at home in that matchup and probably with a better power play upside, I'd rather just play the Rangers. So I do like Arizona here tonight. The problem is that there are just other lines basically at the exact same price that I would rather play. So I'm recommending them, but I'm not, if that kind of makes sense. The Arizona second line is kind of interesting. Cooley, Zucker, Kerfoot. Like, Cooley's getting ice time, or he got ice time in the first game. A lot of it was because of the power play. He got like 5 minutes of power play time in that first game. The reason he didn't get more is because they got a power play in overtime that obviously he wasn't skating on, but, generated quite a bit in their small sample. Like, I was looking at a prospect model for Logan Cooley, and the updated prospect model comparisons from him. The website is called hockeyprospecting.com. It's certainly nothing to do through us. It's just something I like to research through. The lower end of his comparables were Jeff Skinner and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. So that's like, if things don't really work out for Logan Cooley, that's what it kind of expects him to turn into. So it kind of gives a little bit of insight into how good he could be right now. And, like, Jason Zucker is a good player. Like, he's not an elite player, but he is a good, like, kind of like dual threat player. He's a better shooter than passer, but he can kind of do it both. Alex Kerfoot, like, I know we made a lot of fun of him in Toronto, but at least he's responsible defensively, can help out in that regard. So I honestly don't hate Arizona 2 if you want to do a little bit of a filler, like maybe leave off Kerfoot and just go like Cooley, Zucker or something like that. I think that's perfectly fine. Arizona 3 is playable, but they're coming in a little bit over-owned, I think. Like, they might like get to 2% ownership, which I think is a little high for them, especially where the Rangers third line has looked so good. So I'd be inclined to like one-off Lawson Krause or something like that. I don't know if I would full stack that line. So Arizona 1, Rangers 1 in this game for me. I think I would rather play Arizona 1 just because I think they'll come in lower owned. But the problem is for both those lines, I think there are other lines elsewhere on the slate at a relatively the same price that I like better.
Yeah, and just to put a little cherry on top, Arizona 1. They're a good line, not just for the Arizona Coyotes. Like, they're an actually good NHL top line. So,
and that's the other thing with Arizona too, like, or with Arizona as well. Third line, Krause, Michelli, Bukestad, not a great line. But when was the last time they had a third line that good? Has it been since the 2013 lockout? I don't think so. It's got to be at least a decade. I'm not being flippant here. I'm being serious.
Yeah. What was his name? The guy he ended up getting traded to Minnesota, and his career kind of sputtered out. He was a center. I'll remember, like, at 3 a.m, and it's going to wake me up. But yeah, no, but like, I kind of agree with you there. Let's move on to the next one before I completely go off the tracks here. Chicago Blackhawks with a 2.5 total heading into, it was not Victor Rask. That's a good guess. Chicago with a 2.5 total heading into Toronto. The Leafs have a 4.2 total. Here we are with the Leafs again. Like, here we are. Toronto 1. Matthews back-to-back hat tricks. He's probably going to score tonight. They're going to be chalky. It's just a matter of, there we go. Martin Hansel. Richie got it. Martin Hansel was the guy. Thank you. Now I'm going to sleep well tonight. Matthews is probably going to score tonight. He's going to be chalk. I think they're the most expensive line on the slate. It's just a matter of what you want to do with them. Taylor Hall should be back for the Hawks tonight. He's admitted he's not 100%, so it's kind of an interesting situation. They're another one of those lines right at the 17,000 mark, along with Toronto too, which is now Tavares Nylander, Calle Jarnkrok, Max Domi down on the third line with Knies and Fraser Minton, which is an excellent name, but they're only $9,000 going up against the bottom six of the Hawks. That could be interesting, but I kind of like both top lines in this game. I have question marks about Hall. Health, you're mentioning it was his shoulder. I think it's just what you want to do with Toronto 1. Do you want to eat the ownership? They're getting positive leverage based off the top two stack percentage. It's just a matter of what you're going to pair them with, how you're going to be different, and make sure you're not duped.
Yeah, it was interesting looking into the early season Bedard numbers because obviously, he's just completely ridiculous. But I was looking at how much of the offense he's actually chewing up, and he's taking something like 41 or 42% of all the shot attempts that Chicago has when he's on the ice. So he's taking over. He's like the other four guys are all averaging like 15%, and he's at like 42% or something like that. It is absolutely bonkers just how much he's shooting the puck early on. Like, if you look at somebody like Austin Matthews, I think he's at like 27% or something. Like he was at like 27% last season. Like it literally is Bedard and then a bunch of guys. And I hate to say that because I do like Taylor Hall, but the thing with Taylor Hall returning, like he said, he admitted he's not 100%. I think the quote was he's not feeling 110%, which, I always think of that Simpsons skit. Can't be 110%. The problem is it's his left shoulder. And as we were talking about before the show, his left shoulder is one that he had all those problems with back at the start of his career. So is it something that's going to crop up over and over? Like, is he going to take a big hit 10 minutes into the game, or not even a big hit, just like a solid hit against the glass in the corner, and then all of a sudden he's gone? That's kind of the problem. Like, they're coming in with between 5 and 6% ownership, which is giving them positive leverage because we have them as 10. The Chicago top line is 10% top two stack probability here on DraftKings. They're all going to skate on the top power play units as long as Hall's in the lineup. So I honestly don't even hate going in that direction. Like, obviously Chicago's not a good team, but if they're going to score a bunch of goals, it's fair to assume that, some of them are going to come from that top line. Montreal just went into Toronto last week and put in 5 goals, and I wouldn't consider Montreal's top line to really be that much better than this Chicago top line. So I don't hate the idea of going to Chicago 1. Like, I think I would rather play them than Arizona 1, which, our own Josh Anderson might, slap me in person if he ever hears me say that again, because he's a big Arizona pusher. But I don't hate the idea of going that direction, because if this team does get to 3 or 4 goals, like I have a hard time believing it's going to be on the back of like, Boris Kachuk and Nick Foligno. You know what I mean? So I don't mind Chicago 1 here tonight. It is a tough matchup going up against Toronto, but like, hopefully they get some ice time against John Klingberg. You know what I mean? Like,
a tough matchup.
I was waiting for you to say something. At least against that forward line.
The Leafs blue line is a mess, and their goaltending, Ilya Wotanov, is just, they have issues back there. If like Klingberg is their top pair getting big minutes a night, like there's going to be issues there.
Yeah. So, if you want to leave Hall off, I think you can do that because he's $5K, right? It's not like he's a $3,100. Oh, you're turning purple on us. Attaboy.
All right.
Yeah. Grimace over here is starting to get angry. So Taylor Hall is $5K. So even if he has a night where he has like 2 assists and a shot or something like that. It's really not like a slate breaking score. So if you want to leave Hall off, I think you can do that. But obviously, perfect correlation. If he does last the game, you might want him there. So I don't mind Chicago 1 here tonight. Chicago 2, I don't know, man. Tyler Johnson's shooting the puck quite a bit to start the season, which I can't believe. Basically anybody that's not Connor Bedard that's shooting is named Tyler Johnson. So, if he can keep that up. Kelly Yarncroc rejoining the second line kind of changes that line. I wouldn't have minded attacking the second line when Max Domi was there, because Max Domi's just a black hole defensively, but Kelly Yarncroc is definitely not. So I think it makes it a lot tougher for that Chicago line. So if anything, a one-off Corey Perry, maybe a one-off Jason Dickinson or something like that, attack the Toronto bottom 6, because that, we talk about it basically every show. The Toronto bottom 6 is just getting steamrolled, and I have a hard time believing adding Max Domi is going to, level things out defensively. So, something like a one-off Corey Perry, certainly where he's going to get some power play time, pair him with Jason Dickinson. I think I'd rather do that than play anybody from the Chicago second line, to be honest. On the Toronto side, I do love that Toronto top line here tonight. Yes, they're coming in with a ton of ownership. 22% ownership, but we have them at nearly 33% top 2 stacks. So, coming in with positive leverage. They've been over 35 shots per 60 minutes to start the year, which is higher than what they were last year. Matthews, he's shooting, getting a lot of ice time. He's on the penalty kill, which, one thing we talked about, I think on the first or second show of the year, was how forwards are blocking a lot more shots than they were even just 3 years ago. Matthews is one of those guys. And if he's getting some extra penalty kill time, it might add, a block shot every other game or something like that, which is a lot, once you add it up towards the end of the season. So don't mind Toronto 1. I think you can, I don't feel good leaving off Tyler Bertuzzi, but he's really not getting a ton of ice time, 15 to 16 minutes. He is getting 5-on-5 ice time. They are leaving that line together, but William Nylander's just shooting the puck so much that if they do fill the net here tonight, it feels kind of thin that Nylander stays off the score sheet completely. So I think going more towards some sort of Toronto power play stack, or even a Josh stack, stacking 6 players from Toronto, I think is perfectly acceptable. If you want to do a Matthews and Nylander and then stack the Chicago top line to make a game stack, I think that's certainly in play as well. I'll be kind of surprised if this stays as a low score, but the NHL surprises us on a daily basis. The second line had been generating a lot of offense with Domi. They had been giving up a lot with Domi as well, and I think that's why you saw him move down. I don't think they'll be as potent offensively with Yarncroc there, but Nylander shooting the puck the way he is, even if you don't stack Toronto 2, I find it pretty hard to leave Domi off. Or sorry, not Domi. Definitely not Domi. I find it hard to leave Nylander off just about any Toronto stack that I'd make tonight.
Yeah, and purple might be my color. But another thing, you smashed the Leafs bottom 6, and they took their best defensive forward out of the bottom 6 and replaced him with Max Domi. So,
I mean, listen, it can work, right? A couple years when Colorado won their Stanley Cup, it was basically just riding 2 lines to glory. Their third, fourth lines really didn't get that much ice time. The difference between Colorado and Toronto is Colorado has Picard, Taves, and Byram, and Toronto doesn't.
They have. I don't even know who they have down there. It's that bad.
Yeah.
We'll I'm sure this won't be the last time we throw the Leafs under the bus. But as we mentioned off the top, we are sponsored by Bet365. Bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets when you sign up and deposit with a minimum of $10. This is available in Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, and Colorado. If you're on one of the borders of these states, I suggest hopping in your vehicle and driving over the border and getting this deal. You have to be 21 plus, unless you're in Kentucky. You have to be 18 there. If you or anyone else has a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. And if you do follow my big dog plus money props of the night, you can tail that tonight on Bet365. It is I don't even remember what it is. It is Alex DeBrincat power play point. Yeah, so you can tell that if you sign up, you can get free bonus bets with it. Let's get to the last game of the night. The Calgary Flames have a 3.3 total heading into Washington. The Capitals have a 3.1. This game is interesting. All these games are at 7 o'clock, by the way, which is nice. My old candy ass can go to sleep before 11, which is huge for me. Top line of Elias Lindholm, Jonathan Huberdeau, and Mangiapane, 14,300. They're right around their top 2 stack percentage with ownership there. Calgary line coming in over owned for some reason. I don't know why. But one thing I noticed in the Capitals-Penguins game, which was the Capitals' first of the season, the Capitals looked awful.
I was going to say, did you notice that they sucked ass?
But something you mentioned to me today was that Ovechkin, Oshie, Backstrom, after like the first few shifts, they stopped going line 1 versus line 1 matchup. And they went out against the 4th line of Pittsburgh, and they still sucked. So, like, I don't know, man. Like, this is a tough matchup for Washington. I know Calgary melted down in the 3rd period against Pittsburgh. It is what it is. But, like, this line I'd be interested in playing in 2014. You know what I mean? Like, not 2023. I don't know, man. Like, you can have them in your mix. Anytime you can get relatively low owned Ovechkin on a 5-game slate, I guess, like, is fine. But my most interest in, I don't even know what I'm saying. The line I'm most interested in this game is the Calgary top line.
Yeah. Ovechkin coming in at 5% ownership, like, that's always scary, man. Like, it's a 5-game slate. I know that line isn't expected to be good. Like you said, 4 years ago or whatever, I actually looked at their numbers from before, like, last year. Because, last year, Oshie was hurt basically all year. Backstrom was a shell of himself when he came back from his hip surgery, whatever. From 2019 to 2022, they scored 3.5 goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Like, they were a really, really, really good line. There hasn't been a sample over the last, 2 seasons, 1+ seasons or whatever, because of all the injuries. They didn't get a lot of ice time in that first game. Might have been the fact that they were getting their brains beat in. No need to play them a lot. But yeah, they did get moved to the depth matchups, and that's a little bit interesting for me because, if they can somehow get out against that Kadri Dubé line, I think that could go well for them, for Washington, for that Backstrom line, because, Kadri and Dubé aren't really going to carry the load defensively. I can tell you that much. And, you definitely don't want to go out against Backlund and Coleman, but such is the game. What's more interesting to me is that not only is this line coming in with positive leverage, but Nicholas Backstrom has made a huge difference on the Washington power play, even when he's been, like, just moderately healthy, to the point where he helps double their goal scoring output when he's actually on the ice. So where Calgary was like a top 10 team by penalties taken last year, like, the Washington power play could be in a good spot here tonight. The Flames goaltending hasn't looked great to start the year. Like, let's be honest. Three goals, I think, given up in game 1, 5 goals in game 2. Like, Markstrom, he really hasn't been, stellar to start the season after a bad year last year. So I honestly don't hate that Washington top line, but again, they're in that mix with all those other 17K lines, right? The Chicago 1, the Florida 2, the New Jersey 2, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just a matter of, do you want to play them over all the other lines that are very similarly priced? If you're 20 maxing or 150, you're certainly going to have your fair share of them. It's just, decisions to make if you're in single entry, multi-entry. It's Washington 2 that's kind of interesting to me here. And I can't believe I'm saying I'm interested in a line with Tom Wilson on it. But Kuznetsov and Wilson have been able to score over a huge sample of minutes, over 750 minutes together, 3.1 goals per 60 minutes. If you look at Evgeny Kuznetsov's season last year, like, yeah, he only had 55 points. He also only shot 7%. if he shoots anywhere as close to his normal rate, he adds literally 10 goals to his total, and then he's a 65-point player on an awful team. And if you look at some of his playmaking metrics, his scoring chance assist rate, which is the rate that he assists on teammate scoring chances, was right in line with guys like Claude Giroux and Kirill Kaprizov. It's just that, a lot of the guys were hurt and just either not in the lineup or playing injured. So where Kuznetsov and Wilson have typically played so well together, Connor McMichael's on that line now. Connor McMichael's a prospect I've been high on, it feels like, for like 5 years. And it looks like he's finally getting a chance to really break through. I kind of like that Washington second line. They're not coming in with a ton of ownership. They're coming in with negative leverage, 2.5% top 2 probability on DraftKings, about 5.2% ownership. It's a little bit over-owned. But if you look at, some of the other way over-owned spots, like that Rangers third line that we talked about earlier, that's coming at like 9% ownership, I think I would rather play Washington here. You get Kuznetsov on the top line, or top power play unit. You get Wilson on the second power play unit. Ovechkin plays both of them, so you can stack him with Ovechkin if you want, if you don't want to play McMichael. So don't mind Washington 2. Honestly, don't even mind Washington 3. Our boys Dylan Strome and Sonny Milano are now playing with Matthew Phillips. And I had a suggestion from a Twitter follower earlier about what we should name that line because, Milano got, sent away by Anaheim for whatever reason. Chicago dumped Strome for literally nothing, which still just boggles the mind. And Calgary got rid of Matthew Phillips. I wanted to call him the rejection line. That might have been a little tough. The castaway line is something I kind of like. Great movie with Tom Hanks. Good name for the line. Strome and Milano, pretty bad defensively, but pretty good offensively. Don't mind them. If you need like a super cheap 2-man stack somewhere, put Strome and Phillips, Strome and Milano, something like that. So I think it's the Washington second and third lines that I like best, but I don't mind the Washington side here at all. On the Calgary side, I think for me it's top line or bust. The Calgary 3 line, Backlund, Coronado, Coleman, they're coming in a little bit over-owned. And if I'm going to play an over-owned line in this game, I'm just going to go play Washington 2. Like I'll go play guys that are at least have a good sample together. Calgary 1. 14,300 on DraftKings, not coming in with a ton of ownership, 5.5%. Lindholm and Mangiapane have great numbers together, which is surprising considering how bad Calgary was with a lot of their line combinations last year. But 3.3 expected goals, 4.7 actual goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Looks like Andrew Mangiapane's rebounding from a down year last year. He's typically a really, really good goal scorer. Calgary's, I'm not worried really about any matchup from the Washington side. You get two out of three guys on the top power play unit. So I think on the Calgary side, I like their top line the best pretty easily. On the Washington side, I think it's the second line, but I do think Washington has 3 playable lines here tonight. I know they looked really bad in their first game. Maybe they are really bad. A lot of my projections, season-long projections, are muted on them because they're all so old. But, Calgary's might not be that great of a team either. So I think Washington has 3 playable lines here, but Calgary has 1.
Yeah, they are very old. And Evgeny Kuznetsov could be an 8-ball away from becoming Bobby Boom. So, you just don't know. He's not in the chat to defend himself, but I'm sure he'll get back to him. Coming up after us, only one show later, NFL Showdown Live for Lock at 7:15 with Laffy and Neil. So if you are playing Showdown, I will be tuning in at 7:15 p.m. Eastern. Let's talk a little bit about defensemen and goalies. Who are you liking on the blue line?
I mean, I don't really love the expensive options here tonight. I mentioned John Carlson in that picks article for FanDuel because he's quite a bit cheaper on FanDuel. He's like the 6th or 7th defenseman by cost on FanDuel tonight, even though he leads on DraftKings. Don't mind Carlson on FanDuel. I think Dougie Hamilton, if I'm really paying up, obviously Adam Fox against Arizona, okay. But I think a lot of people are going to play Luke Hughes instead of Dougie Hamilton just because of the price. And, anytime I can get Dougie Hamilton at single-digit ownership on a slate with 5 games is at home in a really good high-paced matchup, that's something I'll always look towards. In the mid-price range, I mentioned Shane Gostisbehere earlier. I think you might want to think about including him in your Detroit stacks. Obviously, John Klingberg running the power play for Toronto, great spot for him. He should get ownership. Gustav Forsling, probably going to get the second most ice time after Oliver Ekman-Larsson. He can rack up some shots, so don't mind Forsling either. On the cheaper side, Travis Dermott, if you need a stone min price defenseman. Obviously, Sean Durzi. Sean Durzi's still underpriced by like $1,000, so he's going to be like 25% owned here tonight. Just be aware of that. But Sean Durzi, certainly Luke Hughes, as I mentioned. Damon Severson, he's going to be running one of those new power play units in Columbus. I think he's only like 3,100 or 3,200. He's quite a bit cheaper than Provorov, so I like Severson. Dmitry Kulikov as well from Florida. He should get some minutes. Rasmus Sandin played the second most minutes of any defenseman in Washington in their first game behind John Carlson, and he's running the second power play unit, and they basically split the two units. Ovechkin plays both of them, but it'll give Sandin some power play time. And Kevin Korchinski, who is not in the player pool on FanDuel, despite this being Chicago's fourth game of the season, 2,900 on DK. Don't mind him either.
Yeah, at risk of absolutely chat cursing this player, Klingberg, 45 minutes in 2 games this season, 0 block shots, 1 shot on goal. Great spot. Not a big peripheral guy.
I mean, it's basically Morgan Riley from last year, but $1,000 less, right?
Yep.
So
I get go absolutely ham tonight, but it is what it is. I just had to throw that out there. Looking at some goalies, Joseph Woll making his season debut for Toronto. Igor Shesterkin, they're both 8,300 if you want to spend up. Like the goalie pool tonight is an absolute mess because you have Spencer Martin, you have Connor Ingram, you have Darcy Kemper, James Reimer for Detroit tonight. Like, who do you like? Like, I don't like much.
No, and I'm not somebody that usually pays up for goalies, but Vanacek was the guy that immediately stood out. I wrote about in the picks article, he's one of 4 goalies we have projected for at least 29 saves here tonight. And of those 4 goalies, we have him for the lowest goals against. Florida went into Minnesota and put up like 41 or 42 shots or something like that. And Minnesota is typically a pretty good defensive team. They certainly haven't looked like it so far this year, but typically. So I think the spend up option for me would be Vanacek. I guess Peter Mrazek, if you really want to go cheap, it'd be Mrazek or Ingram for me. I don't think there's really a great option, a great super cheap option here tonight. Bobrovsky, I think, obviously is fine. If I'm saving a lot of money, it's probably Peter Mrazek is the super cheap goalie that I'm playing, but it's between Bobrovsky, Mrazek, and Ingram for the super cheap guys tonight.
Yeah, it's a mess in goalie. Just, do whatever it is that you do, and if you like a guy, play him. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
I'm going with a guy that's not might not get a lot of power play time, but I do love his line here tonight. He's brought me to the promised land once before. Let's see if he can do it again. Carter Verhaeghe.
Nice. If he ever got top power play time, he might be a 100-point player. Like, he probably would be, but
it's crazy, man. Like, oh my God.
I am going Alex DeBrincat. We're going all in on DeBrincat.
Yeah. All right. I like it.
We will be back tomorrow. Hopefully I won't be purple, although it looks good. But we have the Spinorama tomorrow, 100K to first. So big slate, 8 games. Looking forward to seeing you there. Make sure to smash that like button on the way out. And if you still are on the fence, this is the last day to get the 10% off weekly and monthly memberships. Good luck tonight, everybody.
Good luck tonight, everyone.